I invite you all to be seated. So, yesterday was the 45th convention of the Diocese of El Camino Real. No, that's not right. It's the 40th general. Anyway, it was the convention of the Diocese of El Camino Real yesterday. I'll get the number right. For those of you who don't spend all of your days thinking about the polity and functioning of our diocese and of the Episcopal Church, this is your opportunity to find out a little bit more. So the Episcopal Church runs like a representative democracy, primarily because the people who founded our democracy are some of the same people who founded the Episcopal Church. So, cut and paste. We run like a bicameral assembly. And in our diocese, we have diocesan representatives, ours are Tina Ruby and Donna Silva, and we also are represented by our clergy person. And we gather once a year for the business of our diocese, like an annual meeting. It happens in November, and we do all of the usual things that you do at these kinds of gatherings. We approve a budget. We receive reports about some of the important ministries of the diocese, and we debate and pass resolutions. So it's a really exciting morning, and we do it all online now, which is really cool. So yesterday, all of the usual stuff happened, and we started with a wonderful bit of liturgy. It was trilingual, and kind of an extra bit of the Pentecost thrown in because we have simultaneous two-way translation that happens, and so we can hear the languages that are not our primary language happening in the background at the same time that it's being translated for us. So pretty exciting. And then the next thing that happens is the bishop's address. And she gave us a special, I would say gift yesterday, but she said, the bishop's address is recorded, it's posted on YouTube. And she said to all of the gathered delegates, now I want you to take that back to your congregations and use your sermon spot and show that to your congregation. So we're going to do that today. We're going to watch the bishop's address, and then we'll have a little bit of time where I can tell you a little bit more about convention and answer any questions that you might have. So Steve is pulling it out for us. All you need to do is hit play. I think, oh, it looks like it's playing. Oh, no, it's good. It's just going to hit play and then hit the.
Welcome to the 42nd Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of El Camino Real. This year, our theme is Courage in the Wilderness, which is the third part of our series on pilgrimage. At our convention in 2019, I introduced pilgrimage as an overarching theme for this episcopate, not knowing that it would be so important to these first years.
Pilgrimage were based on my own practical experiences as a pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago, and there were 3 lessons that made good sense for us. In 2020, we talked about traveling light. COVID provided us with an opportunity to pare down and find ways to do what was essential.
Sure.
Last year, our theme was full way. Go back to the part I didn't have. The task that we're actually to look at our traditions
and our customs and hold those in juxtaposition with the innovation and creativity that we are called to in our ministries. This year, the theme, Courage in the Wilderness, will carry us forward. So,
Courage in the Wilderness.
Yeah.
The reading that you heard during morning prayer was chosen specifically for this
theme. It is the story of Jesus walking on the water. Now, this may seem odd, as we seldom equate water with wilderness. We often envision wilderness as dry and wild, and a lake doesn't usually remind us of that, especially here in California. Yet this passage is about the spiritual aspects of wilderness, the perceived danger, the fear the disciples felt, the need for proof that God is present. Jesus tells the disciples to have courage, for he is there. And Jesus commands Peter to walk on the water, and Peter steps forward and does just that. He walks on water until he realizes what he is doing. Peter is able to do what he believes to be impossible and walk in that scary place as long as he focuses on the fact that Jesus is there too, calling to him. As pilgrims, we are on a journey on the way of love, walking literally and figuratively into places that are new and unsettling, whether it be water or dry land. Being in the wilderness is something that we as Christians understand theologically, spiritually, and scripturally. Jesus goes out into the wilderness for 40 days and lives in that unsettled space himself. The Hebrews leaving Egypt spent 40 years in the wilderness, learning to leave old habits and identities behind as they become God's people moving toward the promised land. Prophets live in and emerge from the wilderness. Think of John, who meets people on the River Jordan crying out for repentance and offering baptism. What happens in the wilderness is often surprising, transforming, and renewing, yet we must be willing to be in that place, walking a faithful pilgrimage with the God who calls us. It takes courage to do this. The poet E. E. Cummings once said, "It takes courage to show up and become who you actually are." Showing up in the wilderness and being willing to follow Jesus in it is the way in which we grow in faith and become who we are. We don't need much in the way of resources to be faithful followers of Jesus, but we do need courage. In the Episcopal Church, people often ask for a plan, an end goal, a product. We have an overall structure of governance that likes order and tradition. And as others view our denomination in general, I do not believe that many would put Episcopal and wilderness in the same sentence. We do, though. In the Diocese of El Camino Real, we are the Episcopal Church walking in the wilderness. Our particular wilderness is not a bad place to be. Let's look at our resources. We have buildings to host ministry, and we are coming up with new and creative ways to use our buildings. Some examples are Trinity San Jose, Episcopal Church of Almaden, and St. Paul's Cambria. We have a tradition of beautiful liturgy, and our worship is expanding. Most of us now use hybrid models for worship, and parishes have grown lay leadership for daily offices and a variety of prayer services. For those with their eyes on the bottom line, in the overall picture, our diocesan finances are solid and our operating income remains steady. Our School for Ministry is thriving under the leadership of Dean Katherine Doar. Both online and in person, in English and in Spanish, the learning taking place is just what we had hoped for. If you have contact with anyone taking the lay preaching course, you've probably heard about the excitement and success of the program. Despite ourselves, we are evangelists, and the good news is getting out there, partly because of online gatherings, and possibly because we're talking more about what matters. Surprisingly, many parishes are growing in membership because people are connecting with good sermons, the beauty of worship, and the warmth of fellowship that characterize our Episcopal Church, even online. Our community trailblazer, Deacon Jen Crompton, is working with St. Benedict's Los Osos and the San Luis Obispo Canterbury at Cal Poly. Rather than bringing a newly minted seminarian to a parish and training them to be a traditional parish priest, the trailblazer takes parishioners outside and trains them to become new church. It's a wilderness experience, challenging and faithful. We desire connection. Our communications director, Carol Bartolini, while attending to known modes of communication in our diocese, has formed a committee to assess the varieties of ways in which we receive and transmit information, especially as this relates to language, age, and context. And as a resource, we have ourselves, our souls and bodies. Gifted with capabilities and insights, we are well equipped to walk the place that God wants us to go. You're going to see today that we have full slates for our elections to Standing Committee, Board of Trustees, and Commission on Ministry, as well as delegates to General Convention. These bodies are stewards of our resources, ensuring that we have what we need to move faithfully where God calls us. I believe that we have people standing for election in part because these governing bodies chose to gather online, and in part because of the energy and drive to become new church. A beneficial byproduct of this is a reduction in our carbon footprint in our diocese. Yes, being in the wilderness is exciting for some and scary for others. Every risk takes courage, even when the value is high. While at Lambeth Conference in Canterbury this summer with the 650 bishops from all over the Anglican Communion, I learned of people of great courage. I learned of a bishop in Africa who faces violence toward his family and himself on a regular basis. I learned of a bishop who travels 30 hours down the Amazon River in South America in constant danger from pirates. She is committed to this trip in order to baptize and confirm faithful people. I made friends and traded jokes with a young bishop from South Sudan who tends to 44 congregations located in refugee camps and settlements, working in dangerous and very needy situations. This work is risky, and it is essential. It takes courage to be with Jesus in these wilderness experiences. These examples that I have cited from around the globe are by way of saying that anything we set out to do in our own wilderness here in El Camino Real can be done. Our hearts need to be brave and our steps faithful. Unlike Peter, we aren't being asked to walk on water. Unlike our global friends, we are not being asked to travel among pirates, lead without resources, or live in impossible circumstances. We're just being called to be faithful, to walk with Jesus, and to not know all the answers. At our spring renewal this coming April, we will be inspired to find the place of bravery in our own hearts and the strength in our pilgrim feet to be faithful as we walk the way. As the Diocese of El Camino Real, we will continue to put Episcopal and wilderness in the same sentence, reaching to find the courage that enables us to do so. And we will do so with God's help. Welcome to the 42nd Convention of the Episcopal.
Thank you so much, Steve. 42nd. I knew it was close. I think technology is definitely part of this wilderness, and we are grateful for our God. So, walking with Jesus, being faithful, not knowing all the answers. That's a great description of wilderness, I think. And it's, I think, very apropos to this moment where we find ourselves as church and as world. And so I think it's a good place to be. And there's a lot of, I think our bishop tells us a lot for us to do and a lot to take heart in. So I want to open up this time. We can ask questions. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we did yesterday, and just have a sort of a little bit of a free conversation. We did all the usual stuff, like the bishop said. We had elections yesterday. A big part of this convention was the election of our deputation for the next general convention of the Episcopal Church that happens every 4 years. But it's a little out of sync right now. The next General Convention of the Episcopal Church will be in June of 2024, so we needed to elect deputies this year. We also received the report of the most recent General Convention because it was put off by 2 years because of COVID. So there's a lot going on there. A lot of things were referred to us. They've started the process of opening up the definition of what is officially the prayer book to include all of our supplemental liturgical resources. So that's kind of exciting. We're moving towards what the Church of England does already. There were resolutions asking us to look at our historical relationships as the church to Indigenous people and the lands that we hold and some of those things. And indeed, we took up a conversation around starting research and looking into how we can do that here in our diocese. It was very fruitful, very live conversation. I think really enriched by a proposal from Trinity in San Jose that encouraged us to also look in terms of other of the full breadth of diversity in our particular location. They, for example, said in their own congregation, they live just opposite what was the Chinatown in San Jose historically that was burnt down intentionally. And so that, that this could be an opportunity for us to look in a lot of ways to how we've been a part of some of these histories and how we might be making reconciliation today through those. So that's one of the things we talked about. We talked about what's fair wage for church employees and clergy. There was a lot of live discussion because, of course, inflation right now is very high, but it's also very volatile, and how we are just with our employees. So that was a really rich, lively conversation. We passed the balanced budget, as the bishop anticipated that we hopefully might. And we heard a lot about some of the different liturgies, some of the different things that are going on in the diocese. I'm curious, questions, thoughts, observations, responses to what the bishop said that they want to field this morning? Go ahead, Trish.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's 42 years for the
diocese.
So what was the diocese like before 40?
What came before?
Was there no Episcopalian churches?
No, there was. So here's the thing. We're the West, right? And so we kind of came into being a little later in the game than the Eastern Church. So in the East Coast, there's a lot of little tiny small dioceses because that was the populated area by European populations at the time the Episcopal Church was coming into being. So when the United States started to move into the Western United States, the dioceses were big. So we were originally the Diocese of California, literally. Right. And then over time, as populations of Episcopalians have grown in this area, we've divided ourselves up into dioceses. So there's the Diocese of Los Angeles, the Diocese of San Diego, et cetera, et cetera. And our diocese was part of the diocese that covers the rest of the Bay Area until the middle to late 70s. And then we became our own diocese, much like happened in the Catholic Church at the same time. The Diocese of San Jose was formed at that time too. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, things that people want to know about? Why do you do this? Did you talk about that? I'm really worried about this. I'm really excited about that. Okay. I'm really excited about one thing, which is that I was one of the people who was elected to be a deputy for General Convention. And so I will be attending that in 2 years' time. And I hopefully will have some really great, interesting, exciting adventures and news to tell you all about that. It will be my first time serving in that capacity, so I'm looking forward to that. So last chance, but we can keep talking coffee hour, of course. All right. couple of observations that just bubbled up for me as I was sitting through convention yesterday. Of course, I have been thinking about the readings that we heard today all week. And the wonderful thing about those readings, they're all to a certain extent are written to communities who have been through a great loss or catastrophic grief of some sort or another. And they're asking about what's next and what are we doing next? How do we rebuild? They are all in their own wildernesses, right? They're all in their own wildernesses. And two of them, one of them is looking at like, how does the community rebuild? That's the reading from Haggai. And where is God in this? And the other two are looking to like, what comes after death? What comes next, the afterlife? So I consulted this week some notable experts on the afterlife. I spent some time with Stud Turkle. I spent some time with Madeline Langle and with a wonderful podcast called Kindreds that just talked about what is the afterlife and from the Christian perspective, what lots of people different believe and how do we think about that? And I can tell you that the only uniformity of answer that I got is it's a mystery. Even though we have a lot of scripture that talks about that there is an afterlife, it doesn't tell us exactly what it's going to look like. But what we do know is that God is with us in it. That God is with us no matter what happens here and now. God is with us through the grief and loss. God is with us as we are rebuilding and reconnecting and recreating new community. And God will be with us as we go forth into that new creation. This gives me a great deal of faith and hope that, and we just have to figure out what that thing is that God's calling us to in that moment. Remember, God's there, come together, be comfortable walking through the wilderness. So that was kind of my bringing together those two pieces that we got. I want to close with a poem. It's a poem by Amanda Gorman, and it's called The Miracle of Morning. I thought I'd awaken to a world in mourning, heavy clouds, crowding, a society storming. But there's something different this golden morning, something magical in the sunlight, wide and warming. I see a dad with a stroller taking a jog. Across the street, a bright-eyed girl chases her dog. The grandma on a porch fingers her rosaries. She grins as her young neighbor brings her groceries. While we might feel small, separate, all alone, our people have never been more tightly tethered, because the question isn't if we will weather this unknown, but how we will weather this unknown together. So on this meaningful morn, we mourn, we mend. Like light, we can't be broken even when we bend. As one, we will defeat both despair and disease. We stand with healthcare heroes and all employees, with families, libraries, waiters, schools, artists, businesses, restaurants, and hospitals hit hardest. We ignite not in the light, but in lack thereof. For it is in loss that we truly learn to love. In this chaos, we will discover clarity. In suffering, we must find solidarity. For it's our grief that gives us our gratitude, shows us how to find hope if we ever shall lose it. So don't ignore the pain. Give it purpose. Use it. Read children's books. Dance alone to DJ music. Know that this distance will make our hearts grow fonder. From a wave of woes, our world will emerge stronger. We'll observe how the burdens braved by humankind are also those moments that make us human, kind. Let each dawn find us courageous, brought closer, heeding the light before the fight is over. When this ends, we'll smile sweetly, finally seeing, in testing times, we became the best of beings.